Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It is CoachFury here today, and we are back with another episode, another series of episodes on the CBGM, the College Basketball General Manager League, utilising the Draft Day Sports College Basketball 21 game engine. And well, today, as you can probably see, we've got up on the screen, we have a Coach's Corner. The plan with this is to be sort of a long-running series throughout the CBGM's life, where we go and we sort of go and have a little chat with some of the coaches in the league, find out a little bit more about them, and try and bring to life some of the human coaches that are looking after these teams, all trying to win, all trying to be successful, and see a little bit more about what they're interested in, what their philosophies are, how they're doing their recruiting, all these great things. That'll be hopefully some good tips for anyone who's watching the episodes. But also it's great to just have a little chat with some different coaches and hear a different voice to me. So without further ado, I guess let's dive straight into today. And today I have the first one on the show, the first episode, The Coolest Jedi. Welcome to the channel. Welcome. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us what teams you've got, I'm sure people can guess from the logos, but great to have you on.
Yeah, it's great to be on, CoachFury. I'm the Coolest Jedi, and I run the Georgia State basketball team and the Illinois basketball team here in the CBGM. So if you ever see those teams doing well or bad in any of the videos posted on the CBGM, I would be behind both of them.
There you go. So two completely different teams as well, as we said just before we came on the channel on the episode today. Different ends of the spectrum. But before we perhaps talk a little bit about the two teams that you have, let's find a little bit more about yourself. So I guess first question I'll probably ask everyone is, how did you find the league? How did you get the interest and the hype to join in and dive in, especially with two teams?
Yeah, so I found the link on a online league flyer for the GM Games Discord, which you could all pretty much find pretty easily. It's pretty nice place to hang out if you play any sports management games. It's pretty much everything from Football Manager to Draft Day Sports Pro Basketball, Draft Day Sports College Basketball. So it's everything in there, and that's how I found out about the league. I was really interested in it because I've never been in an online league for a sports simulation game, so I was really intrigued. And Draft Day Sports College Basketball is one of the games I play the most, so it was really interesting to get in and create some content for it and just have a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, the GM Games Discord, I'm sure everyone who is in the league will know about it, considering we are attached to that Discord channel and Discord server. So I guess you also said this is your first ever online league. What other sort of GM games and GM sports games have you played in the past? Have you sort of delved into? Has it all been basketball? Have you looked at other sports?
Yeah, so I've played a lot of the Draft Day Sports basketball games. I played the pro side. I played the college basketball side, and that's been like since I think Draft Day Sports College Basketball, Pro Basketball 17, and then I played the pro football side of it a little bit, and I played the college football side of it a little bit as well. I played some sports sims from the Grey Dog software games. I think they had the Fast Break Pro Basketball and college basketball games as well, and they've also had the bowl-bound college football game. So I'm more interested in the basketball aspect of it, but I played things like Out of the Park Baseball, Franchise Hockey Manager, so a wide range of sports simulations that I just have a lot of fun in. But mostly I'd say basketball is sort of where my passion lies, and in real life and also in sports simulation games. I understand the game a lot more, understand what I want to do, understand like a lot of the stats that are being kept. I understand a lot of what sort of players sort of exist in the fictional basketball game. So
yeah, no, awesome. I mean, there's some great games you list off there. I mean, I remember the fast break basketball games. They were really, I really enjoyed them. I have to say the college game was definitely better than the pro game, but definitely great ones. Cool to see that you've delved out into some of the other Draft Day Sports games as well. But obviously, you said colleges and basketball in general is your main focus, and you talked a little about your philosophy. I guess probably before we delve into the teams again, I mean, we've got two different teams here, different sort of standings, different prestige. What's your philosophy? Is it the same philosophy for both? I'd be interested to understand what that looks like.
Yeah, well, my approach to when I took these teams is that I wanted to get in on the Sun Belt, which is sort of like the unofficial, official league of the CBGM, like where everyone pretty much goes if you have a lower prestige team. And I was really interested in doing the Sun Belt because I felt there's a lot of low prestige teams and there's a lot of like fighting over those more like recruits who will land under the radar, who won't go to Michigan State, Michigan, or Georgia, those bigger teams in the conferences, those big Power 5 teams. So I wanted to really make sure I was in a place where it's like, okay, I can hunker down and play a little smaller team, lessen expectations, and also bring in some players that might slip under the radar, like players who don't normally get talked about in the articles because they're not on the Norton list or they're not being in the national championship games, but players who are maybe competing in the NIT or the CBI or the CIT tournaments, those lesser known tournaments in the postseason that aren't the March Madness, just aren't your typical the NCAA main tournament. So that was what my focus was with Georgia State, is that I really wanted to play them because I thought it'd be really fun to have an all user sort of conference play out and see how we could upend each other as these lower prestige teams, which I think most of the teams in the Sun Belt are like in that 30-20 prestige range. And then for Illinois, I originally didn't think anyone would come into the Big Ten because I thought it'd just be like a bunch of people going elsewhere. But the Big Ten, I believe, is also fully user filled. So that was pretty cool to understand. I got into the Big Ten pretty quickly with Illinois. I think I was like one of the first like 3 people in the Big Ten teams with Illinois. And I really took Illinois because mostly personal preference. I'm an Illinois fan in real life and also in college basketball. It's sort of a rebuilding project with the team. They're like an 80 prestige team in the default mod of the game, so they have that like sort of prestige, but they're also like an A plus academic school. So it's sort of, you have to balance getting the best talent with also getting a lot of smart kids in there. And I really like that challenge because I think that's one of the most, because I could have chose like a big team that has like, a GPA requirement of maybe a 2.1, or maybe it has an academic requirement that's really low, but you can get great players in there. But I thought that would just kind of mitigate the challenges of playing the game. I feel like it's a lot more fun when you're playing like wouldn't even call Illinois like a power team, sort of. It's in a power conference, but it's not really a power team. In real life, we won the Big Ten tournament, and also Illinois has been rebuilding for a very long time. So as an Illinois fan, it was really fun to just like take the team over in a fictional universe and sort of rebuild it to my own,
Yeah, it's just really interesting. I mean, it's awesome that you're obviously a fan of Illinois and you're taking that team, like myself, Michigan. It's nice to actually have a team that you support and follow along. It kind of gives you that extra incentive. But the other thing I picked up on that was fascinating was that not only is this your first multiplayer league with other humans, obviously the game that we're running on Draft Day Sports College Basketball is on brutal recruiting. For those who don't know, that means that recruiting is incredibly hard for human GMs and makes the AI a bit stronger. And then also, you've not just taken 2 teams where it's a simple, plug and play kind of, as you said, maybe lower requirements for their GPA and easier to get some top talent. You've taken 2 teams there. Illinois academics, real challenge anyway, another additional layer of difficulty. And then Georgia State, who are obviously down there in the Sun Belt, which is, as you said, it's kind of like I call it the CBGM Division 2, really. It's not going to really compete with anything in terms of what's going on in the big elite areas, but there's going to be some added incentive to beat those other GMs, other coaches in that division and conference as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was one of the main drawing points to coming to a team like Illinois. And I know that's something that's like a challenge in the Draft Day Sports games, specifically for college basketball, is that you have like recruiting's already such a different thing from the pro game, but then you also have the academic requirements being in there. So you have to make sure there's a certain like amount of kids you can only go after. Like you can't go after maybe the 2.7 GPA kids with an A plus academics, and you can't go after the 2.6 guys, even if those are 5-star guys who perform really well at camps, even though those are guys who are probably going to go to like your Michigan States, your Michigans, your Ohio States, your Kentuckys, et cetera, et cetera. And that's sort of like the same challenge with a school like Duke too, where Duke has also A plus academics. So you have to sort of balance getting top recruits, but you also have to balance that with getting top academic performers. And that's just sort of a really hard balance to make out in the game. And I think that's just what adds that extra challenge and something that really intrigued me about Illinois as well, because I just thought like, okay, it's an added challenge of I'm not the best in the Big Ten. I'm also not the best prestige-wise team. And I'm also going to have to compete with the bigger schools who also need academic requirements. So
yeah, a really tough challenge. And talks a little bit about the 2 programs and reasons for sort of picking them, and the challenges you've got are very interesting ones, I think, to take on, even in single player, let alone in a multiplayer human league. I guess before we talk a little bit about the actual recruiting and the roster that you've been given to start this season and your expectations. What's your general basketball philosophy? What sort of camp do you sit in? Are you more of like the modern style of play where it's 3-point shooting, cuts, layups versus the grind it out style, old school offense of the 80s and the tough defense of the 90s? Where do you fit? Where does your sort of philosophy come from?
Yeah, as a basketball fan for a lot of years, I feel like I've sort of grown into becoming more of a fan of the modern game, where there's a lot of threes, there's a lot of guys sitting on the outside. In real life, Illinois is coached by Brad Underwood, who runs a spread offense, and so that means that everyone but the big center is at the 3-point line or the outside or the mid range area. So everyone's getting those shots and trying to either drive to the basket or they're shooting a three. So I feel like that's where I'm at as a basketball fan. It's like, hey, I'm going to be here. Other people are going to be there. And there are some people who may be fans of, that other camp who are fans of old school basketball. I'd say I'm more of a fan of the modern game, a lot more fast paced, a lot more passing, a lot more unselfish shooting, things like that. So.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I guess influenced a little bit by your support of Illinois. In terms of the pro scene, do you have any particular teams you follow there, or is it mainly college for you?
It's also pro as well. I'm a big Chicago Bulls fan, but they're not the greatest team at the moment. They're still in the rebuilding mode, so it's a challenge to see where they'll go in the future. But they also play a pretty heavy 3-point offense as well. It's not a lot of driving. It's a lot more standing around at the 3-point line and making sure we get a good pass, a screen here, and then shooting off that screen. So.
Yeah, no, I think so, and very much so. If you've got some of the great stretch fours that Chicago are trying to develop at the moment, makes sense to play that style of offense. So let's take a little look at some of these teams then that you've got. Let me just quickly flick over the screen to the standings page. Where would you like to start? Would you like to start with Georgia State or Illinois? Which one's your preference?
Let's go with Illinois. I feel like Illinois might be a little longer than what I'll do with Georgia State. I feel like Georgia State's a little bit more straightforward considering the roster and the conference as well. So,
yeah, cool. Okay, so before we talk about your recruiting for this season, which I'm guessing is going to be probably your heaviest influence area so far, what was your initial thought of this roster that you took on at the beginning of the season?
So the initial thought of the roster when I inherited was that the AI had auto-generated all the players already. So that's what they do when you first load in any game in draft day sports college basketball. So the AI had auto-generated this, and the AI had auto-generated a freshman class already for me. So I had about, I think it's 5 freshmen who came in. So I had like a top 3 class in the country because, as you can see there, Brendan Page and Casey Johnson are 2 of the best players on my team, and they're both freshmen. So I had those happen, and I was just kind of like, what can I do with those 2 guys? You know what I mean? So we had Brett Corsi, who was also a freshman, and he's a power forward, and there was Jay Harper as well as a freshman. So my entire team was basically built around a bunch of small freshman guys and trying to make them good. And so my thoughts coming in was that this is going to be a project at Illinois for this first 2 to 3 seasons. So I'm not going to be able to have like a season where I'm dominating. You know what I mean? I can't win the Big Ten automatically right now. I can't win a tournament right now, but maybe 2 to 3 years down the line, if my players develop, if the red shirts I have develop, then I'll be a force to be reckoned with within the Big Ten. But my initial thoughts when I came into Illinois was that this is going to be a project, and a project that's going to take a little bit more time. So I'm going to be a little bit more patient, as opposed to I didn't inherit a roster that was full of like 5-star guys or like juniors and seniors who were like the best players at their positions.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think when I did the preview of Illinois, I think I said that the backcourt was very interesting. There's a lot of really good prospects in the backcourt, and the freshman class looked really good. But that was kind of meant that you were going to be hindered for the first couple of years, really. I guess you're hopeful that some of these freshmen who have got the high potential won't declare for the draft and just walk away immediately before you've had a chance to get your hands on them and actually see some proper development out of them. I mean, in terms of the team, if I quickly flick over to the player ratings, just so everyone can see that as well. I mean, were you kind of comfortable with a style of play that would work for this team, or did you feel that this was a team that I'm going to actually have to adapt how I'm going to get a performance out of them for the first season?
Yeah, so when I loaded into this team, because so many of the freshmen are starting, there's no real set identity for the team, you know. So usually when you automatically load into draft day sports college basketball, the team has a set style of play already. Some of the players already know that set style of play, especially when it's AI generated rosters. But for this, because there's so many freshmen already in the roster, they didn't have a set style of play. So I had to look at the sort of player ratings for my starting five, the guys on the bench, and so I chose the 5-out offense because everyone knew how to shoot from outside here. Everybody, I believe, is a 70 or above for outside shooting, but we're really bad on the inside shooting. So close to the rim, I knew that I couldn't really play the triangle offense or something like a motion offense. I had to play a more 5-out style, which would come with a hindrance on rebounding, but would also help me score a lot more points and become a more efficient offense if I played the right players in the position. So I just knew that with this roster, a 5-out was going to be my best option to even be competitive this season. And I tried the zone defense early in the season, just didn't work for me. We just gave up a lot more points. I switched to the man, and we're doing a lot better on defense there too. So I'm really okay with my record right now. It's 10-9, 5-4 in the conference, and I'm not too upset. Like a lot of the best teams in the Big Ten right now have a lot of players who are probably either going to declare for the draft or they're leaving just because they're seniors. So I have a roster that's sort of going to be sticking around for a little bit, and I'm hoping that we develop enough that we understand the 5-out for next season and the season after that. That will be even better.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that is rightly said. Like, obviously, you've got some good players to fit that style, and kind of fits your philosophy, as you said at the beginning of the show, in terms of that fast-paced 3-point shooting, outside threat type of team. You also have a lot of very athletic players as well, which I've only just noticed on looking at it through here. So you can play a very modern, fast-paced style of play out the bat, which I guess is something you're probably quite excited about, and to build around with those freshmen that you've got in this first class.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the main things that just made me really excited with Illinois is that like this is a team I can really put a lot of the times when you load in an auto-generated roster, you'll have a lot of star players who are seniors, or a lot of starters who are seniors, and so you'll have to go recruit to make up for that. But with Illinois, I can build an attachment to these players since they are freshmen and they are sophomores and they'll redshirted freshmen, and those will be players I'll have next year or the year after that, or I'll have like 3 to 4 years down the line who'll still be at this school, who I'll be knowing what they did last year, the year before that. I'll have historical stats of what they did the season before, the season after, and like sort of compare where I want them to be, while also recruiting new players to fit my philosophy.
Yeah, and talking of players, do you want to just give us a bit of an understanding of to why you redshirted Brett Causey and Jay Harper? What was the thinking
Yeah.
behind those two?
So the thinking behind Jay Harper was he was gonna. I cut one player already. It was a sophomore shooting guard who I was not very hyped on. He wasn't very good from shooting outside, and he wasn't very good from shooting inside, and couldn't really score. And he was a 2-star, 4 potential player. And I was like, I think I'll just cut him, get the free scholarship, and see what I can do in recruiting. And I expected myself to recruit a shooting guard. Instead, I got a power forward I had to settle for because I lost the shooting guard to CBGM's Chris, who runs Creighton. So he took that player from me, and I was like, I was a little distraught from it. But I think the power forward I picked up is okay. He won't be a first year starter, but he's more like a project. As I said, I'm just trying to make sure I build guys who understand the offense. And Brett also doesn't have the ratings to really compete in the Big Ten front court. There's a lot of the top teams in the Big Ten have a great front court. So a great center, they have a great power forward, they have people on the bench who can play power forward and center. And my front court is pretty bad. So I didn't want to put Brett Corsi out there to automatically start and just see him get destroyed every night, because I don't think he would provide the offense nor the defense to really help us in that situation. And we have a junior in Cliff who's just a way better shooter, a better rebounder, and a better defensive player. So
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Interesting, you've made a cut already as well. I guess that interesting that you decided to just take the prestige hit and just get that scholarship back to immediately use it straight away. I guess if we move on, I mean, in terms of your top performers, I mean, it's probably no surprise that Ashburn, Johnson, and Page are kind of leading the line for you in terms of putting up numbers. Is there anyone who's surprised you out of this roster so far that you probably may have thought borderline, maybe a starter, maybe a rotation piece, who's sort of actually performing much better than you expected?
Yeah, actually, if you see right there, and you click on Anthony Blakemore, the small forward sophomore, he has performed really well off the bench, which I didn't expect him to perform at all. He's performed so well off the bench in the beginning of the season and sort of its middle season that I switched him from a starting super sub, from being just like playing like 24 minutes. He's off the bench. He's going to score me some points. He's going to go back off the bench, and then the starting lineup's going to come back off. I've switched my style to a more small ball style, so he starts alongside my other guys because he's been so good on at the offensive position. I think he's shooting from three, shooting 353 percent from three, and from the field he's shooting 388% from the field, which I think we'll see even climb as he gets more playing time and more touches on the starting position. Because I didn't expect him to be this good at all. I expected him mostly just sit on the bench and give me maybe some 12 or 13 point games here, but he's really impressed me a lot more than I expected him to.
Yeah, and two player of the games as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, not too bad numbers actually from him coming up. I guess moving on from the actual roster, we'll probably talk about recruitment in a minute, but just staying with the current season, just looking through your schedule here so far. You obviously mentioned that you're probably not going to be up there with the top teams in the Big Ten this year, but
Mhm.
I mean, how are you performing against your expectations for this first season?
Yes. So if when you load into the game, you can go into media and you can look at magazines and you can look at where everyone like the game predicts your rank. And Illinois was predicted to be number 3 at the from the bottom. So I think we did a lot better than that. I mean, we are 5-4 right now. We've lost some games against some good teams, but we also have lost some games to some good teams at both home and on the road. So I wasn't too upset about that. And that's just something I felt that we're not performing too badly for where I think we should be, because I just don't think this team is ready enough to compete in the Big Ten now. But I'm just looking. This is more of a test season for myself. I feel like
Mhm.
I want to make sure everyone knows the strategy. I want to make sure I have a list of guys that I want to keep, a list of guys I know are going to be good performers. So you can see that Page and Blakemore are two of the guys I want to make sure develops. Page is sort of off and on, inconsistent. While Johnson is more of that star player that like I want to make sure keeps around. So I just wanted to make this is an evaluation season. I feel like for me.
Yeah, and I mean, if you mentioned obviously you lost to some teams you probably expected to this year based on the predictions at the beginning of the year, but they were quite close losses. I think it's fair to say. I mean, other than the Indiana game, which was bit wide open, really. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Iowa you pushed to within 3 point. Well, you actually beat with 3 points. That was a team that's probably beginning of the season was expected to be above you. But then
Mm-hmm.
you also pushed Minnesota, who are surprising everyone, to just within 7 points. So certainly not a bottom three performance from looking at the current schedule so far.
Yeah, there's been a lot of surprising developments in the Big Ten. A lot of teams I didn't expect to be where they are in the standings in the Big Ten are in the Big Ten in those standings, and so having a above 500 record right now is pretty good for us, because I just don't think we'll do much, at least in the regular season. But I feel like conference tourney, we're a team that people want to watch out for, because the fact that we shoot threes at such a nice volume, I think we're top 50 in the nation in 3 point percentage. And the fact that we're able to shoot threes at such a good volume, and that's also at a good pace and efficiently, is such a reason that we'll be able to compete with pretty much any team. As you saw there, we were competing with Minnesota. I mean, at home, a 7 point loss to one of the best teams who are in the country right now in Minnesota. I think that's not too bad for us. I feel like
No, that's certainly
yeah.
not too bad at all. Certainly not too bad. And yeah, I think interesting. I mean, in terms of, you said this year's a development season. Looking ahead to next season, and obviously a chance where you're actually will start to bring in your own recruits and probably your own sort of philosophy and style. But it sounds like it's going to be very similar to what Illinois have got at the moment. I just would be interested to understand. Obviously, you mentioned that you've only got one recruit coming in next year, which is JP Benton,
Mhm.
the ranked 76 power forward in the nation coming in. So you've had, I mean, only one player, but that's a good player to bring in surely for your first recruiting class.
Yeah, he is actually pretty great. I mean, he's not great at like, I believe if I'm remembering correctly, he's not a very good defender. He's not very athletic, and there's some other things that he doesn't have. But he can shoot inside, he can shoot from the outside. He has terrific rebounding, and he can score. And those were the four things I was worried about. I want to build a team from 1 to 5 positions that can shoot from three. And so anyone who can do that, I'm trying to bring in here. And if that means I have to put traditional bigs on the bench, I will do that because I feel that the 5 out is a much more dangerous strategy when everyone on the everyone on the court has to be guarded from the 3 point line. So you can't just sit there and trap two of my guards and then have the rest of the team sort of try to plow inside. You have to trap everyone because everyone can shoot from three if they get the green light.
Yeah, especially if you can find that that kind of elite sort of front player who can shoot both outside and inside. That makes it even more dynamic going forward, and they're going to be matchup nightmares, I imagine, for anyone playing you in the future. If that is the philosophy you're going ahead with. So, talk a little bit about Illinois. Should we go and talk a little bit about the other team that you've got under your control, which is the Georgia State team? I mean, talks a little bit about obviously completely different spectrums. Sun Belt is more of like the pride. Whoever wins that's going to be very proud, I think, because of the number of human GMs in that league. Take us through your Georgia State team and how that's looking for the rest of the year.
Yeah, so the Georgia State team, the one thing you're going to see is that pretty much everyone is pretty bad, but you see that we have a winning record in the conference, and that's mostly due to one guy, and his name's Drew Dye. He's our center, and he's just amazing. Like, he doesn't have the scoring ratings to like should be shooting this efficiently, but he's like I think a 97 inside rating scorer. So he basically just gets his back to the basket, and it's just automatic. I think he's the leading scorer in the Sun Belt right now, I believe. So it's just him. He's the reason I win games. He's averaging 16.2 points a game. No one can really guard him in the Sun Belt. So if I even win the Sun Belt or I win the tournament, he's the only reason I'll do that because he's just so good. The rest of the team is not very great, but then you have just Drew Dye, who's like you have to triple team him basically.
Yeah, but he's putting up 16 and 5 in a block a game, just under a steal a game and an assist a game, and his efficiency rating is 19.1. So that's a pretty good player to build any offense around, to be perfectly frank, if that is the level of performance. And it's probably worth saying that he's only a junior as well, so chances of him declaring in the Sun Belt are pretty slim. I doubt he will transfer, so he's probably a nice guy. You can probably build a little bit of a program around for the next couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. I think if he stays for next year, I'd be bringing in a shooting guard who can shoot from the outside from three, Dustin Calvary, and he's not too bad at all. So I'll probably be bringing him in, and he'll be sort of that whole my starting shooting guard next year. So he'll be able to fit in nicely with Drew. He can shoot from the three. That allows a lot of Drew's time in the inside of the paint to sort of spend more time there.
Yeah, I was just having a quick look at Dustin Cavalry. Unfortunately, we can't bring him up on the web pages, but we've got him in game. And just for those for interest, I guess he was a ranked 370 odd player overall, but pretty much from what I can see on scouting, he is a guy who's pretty much average at everything apart from outside shooting, where he looks like he could be elite at. So, as you said, if you're building a program around a great inside guy like Drew Dye, and then you've got outside threat, makes it a real dynamic offense going forward. I guess you obviously mentioned that this Georgia team is obviously performing pretty well at the minute, being 11 and 9, and obviously Drew Dye is sort of the main factor of that. Are there any sort of performances here where you sort of from this team you sort of said, oh, okay, actually this team could be contending in the Sun Belt this year versus sort of being that middle of the pack where they may have probably been without you?
So if you look at that Buffalo Bulls game, you can see that C. Howard was the leading scorer, so it wasn't Drew Dye. And that's when I think we're at our best. When Drew Dye doesn't have to put up maybe 16 or 20 points a game, he can play a backseat role to other players on the team, and C. Howard can play a lot more. We'll be seeing a lot more wins because that means a lot more guys are stepping up. And so that Buffalo Bulls games was like a pretty eye-opening experience for me because that means, okay, I don't have to rely just on Drew Dye to score. And you can also see we beat Clemson away from home. And we just need to stay a consistent team there. So you can see everyone just kind of pitched in against Clemson. And the only time we really lose is when we see not a lot of production from Dye or a lot of production from Dye, but not a lot of production from other guys who aren't Dye.
Yeah, that Clemson game was the one that I was angling at. I could see that one. It's like, oh my god, that's actually a really good result for Georgia State in the first year. Yeah, interesting team to take on. I guess it's a completely different spectrum to Illinois, but it gives you a nice opportunity because maybe you've got a shot at taking the Sun Belt this year with this team, whereas Illinois might be more of a bit of a longer term build, as you said, with the freshmen there. Just to kind of close up the episode, I'd be very interested to know, if you were sitting here in this seat 5 seasons from now in the CBGM, what would be your ideal outcome for both teams, and where realistically would you sort of want them to be by that point, considering you'd have had a couple of your own recruiting classes, you'd have been able to put your philosophy on this team, on both teams, sorry. Where would you like to see both in sort of those 5 seasons time?
So for Georgia State, I'm going to be realistic. I don't think we'll ever really crawl anywhere. Like, we'll probably make a couple of NCAA tournament appearances just because I think we can win the Sun Belt a couple of years, but that'll be it. I don't think basically the Georgia State plan is to build the prestige up and try to recruit like a 4-star guy from the state. That's my plan with Georgia State. Nothing too crazy. Win the Sun Belt a lot. Be competitive in the Sun Belt at least, and try to make like an NIT tournament or something like that. For Illinois, I would want to be sitting here 5 years from now in game with a national championship, the Big Ten championship, and being ranked, because I feel that that's the 3 things that I want to do as Illinois. I want to get ranked. I want to win a national championship using the 5-out system, and I also want to win the Big Ten.
That's some bold statements there from Illinois. Georgia State, it sounds like a little bit more conservative, mainly focused around recruitment. It sounds like that if you can sort of become a bit more of a better recruiting team and build them up. But yeah, Illinois to win a championship, certainly if you keep the freshmen and they develop and you continue to build around that philosophy, as you said, with the great shooting that team's already got, and certainly within a shot of doing that. I guess final comments really, in terms of, we talked a little bit about the teams and about what your plans are in terms of where you want to see them going. Are there any sort of, if there was any sort of new coaches looking at joining the CBGM or looking at getting involved in the game and maybe want some tips from yourself, bearing in mind you've had a couple of iterations of experience through the Draft Day Sports College basketball games now, is there anything you want to just let them know about at the end of the show to sort of pick up as sort of tidbits to help them if they were to join the CBGM and grab a team?
Yeah, I would make 3 actually. I would say 1, try to have a philosophy when you come in. You want to know what sort of offensive and defensive strategies you want to run at the school. When you get to the school, look over your roster and plan sort of what your future wants to be. Like, if you see a sophomore guy who's like a 4-star, won't declare, and you want to build around him, make sure you sort of have a team that's sort of built around that guy. And 3, I would make sure to just understand that the game's all about learning on the go. You're not going to be perfect in one season. You may not even have a great season one season, but that doesn't mean you can't have a great season the next. Always try to make sure that you're just trying your best, learning from experiences. You're not probably going to win the national championship in 1 year, but you can always try to build to win a national championship. And I think that's way more important than winning it off the bat, is having the hard work pay off, that you built a team that can win a national championship.
Cool. Some great tips there and great advice there in terms of sticking with philosophy and building and setting sort of goals as you go along, and building towards, wherever you want to go, and accept that building a national championship is going to be hard. There's a lot of coaches in here, a lot of good teams, and it's going to be a challenge for everyone. The Coolest Jedi, thank you very much for coming on and kicking off this series of Coach's Corner. Best of luck with the rest of the season, and hopefully we'll have you back in maybe next season or in a couple of seasons' time and do a bit of a recap of where you've taken the team from now. Yeah,
I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate being able to be available for this, and hopefully we can chat about how Illinois won a couple of national championships in 2
Who knows? Maybe Michigan will have to win a few before that, though.